Welcome to the Nuclear Power Institute's The Path of Most Persistent podcast. The podcast highlighting individual stories of persistence, community outreach, and inspiration to support the continuing and emerging nuclear science and technology needs across the state of Texas. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast.
Good morning, and welcome to the Path of Most Persistence. Today, we have with us Carolyne Joseph, who is the Director of Operations for Dresden Nuclear Power Station. Before we get started, I want to mark the day. It is September the 9th, 2021, and we're thrilled to have Carolyne with us. Carolyne, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you, Valerie. I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to participate in this.
This is such a great opportunity for us. You were introduced to us by one of our colleagues, the Associate Director for the NESC, Jerry Jenkins, and we've had a conversation before today just in preparation, and we're all very excited. You're such an impressive individual, and we've gone over your CV and your bio in preparation, so today's really exciting. And for us, just as a reminder to our audience, the whole purpose of having these conversations through the Path of Most Persistence is to hear stories from some of our colleagues, our friends, and maybe even our associates that have compelling stories of overcoming obstacles with persistence and diligence and hard work. And just to bring about some of those stories to share with some of our audience that are maybe younger, our K-12 students, and maybe some of our colleagues that are a little bit more veteran like myself. So, and with that being said, can you tell us a little bit about what you do as the Director of Operations, and maybe a little bit about how you got there?
Absolutely, Valerie. So as the Director of Operations, I'm responsible for the day-to-day operation of both of the units at Dresden. So we have equipment operators, licensed reactor operators, licensed senior reactor operators, reactor engineers, as well as our chemistry department that all reports up through me as the director. So we get to touch all the plant equipment and make sure that it operates safely and error-free every day. So I got into this position where I currently am based on where I started in the industry. So I joined the company that I've been with for about 15 years ago. I started very briefly as a core design engineer and realized very quickly that I'm much more of a hands-on type of individual. So I wanted to get to a plant and went to a plant in South Central Illinois as a reactor engineer. And I did that role for a little bit, and I'm the type of individual where if I am not constantly busy and challenged, I get bored. I am not my best employee and my best engaged employee when I'm not constantly challenged. So after kind of learning the routine and doing that for 2 years, I knew I wanted to make a change and get my operator's license. And at that plant, we had never had a woman that had been licensed previously, so it was a pretty big goal of mine to get that license, and so I went to license class and received my license in 2009. So depending on where you are, it's an 18 to 24 month program that completes with a exam that's administered by the government. It's a written exam and a simulator performance exam that lasts about 2 weeks. So got my license and was licensed for about 8 years and worked my way up through operations management and had to be pried away from ops to go experience a different portion of the company, and went to be the outage manager, responsible for managing refueling outages, forced outages, and all that preparation. Did that for a couple years, then was the work management director, which is responsible for managing all the work that's done, whether it's online or in an outage at the plant. And then transferred to a different station, which is the current station I'm at now, as the engineering director, which was a little intimidating because even though I have an engineering degree, I really have not used it in that capacity. So did that role and am now the operations director.
Okay, I'm exhausted. That is amazing. That is so impressive. And I started taking notes of all of the items that I wanted to follow up on, but I think I ran out of paper. That is so impressive. I, I I guess because this is the path of most persistence, I just want to hear right off the bat, how is it, and especially 15 years in a particular business or site, it can, and all the changes that you've had, the positions, the roles, the responsibilities. Um, how have you been able to maintain and adjust and pivot all the things and still maintain your level of passion? Because surely being anywhere for 15 years, you have the flows of passion and desire and encouragement, and then just because life is life, sometimes it's not as fun, or you don't feel quite the spirit to be where you are in the position you are for so long. So how is it that you've just been able to maintain, to pivot, to grow in a certain location for that amount of time?
Yeah, I'm a lifelong learner. It is really important to me to just constantly be learning. And I think regardless of the position, there's been some positions that I've had that, were not by choice, but it was to develop a specific, talent, an attribute, skill set that I would need to be successful down the road. So it was really important to, as part of being that lifelong learner, even if it was something I did not want to do, what can I get out of this? What can I take from it? Who can I develop? That became more important. The further along I went in my career, the higher that I went up in management, was sometimes it wasn't about what I was going to get out of it, but who can I take with me and develop them so that they get out of it what will be important for their career, which is almost more motivating than, getting things out of it for myself. That's certainly, as I've progressed in my career, something that I have much more passion around than maybe I did, starting out, seeing the benefit of watching someone else succeed and do the things that, I see that they have that potential, and then seeing it actually come into fruition is, pretty incredible to experience, and has a whole lot of, rewards that come with it personally for me.
Caroline, I so love what you're saying, and I feel so simpatico right now because of maybe not only your history, but also it seems like your philosophy on things. And I apologize because I'm going to hip hop and zigzag from some of the things that you're saying, from where I want to go, because I'm trying to keep in mind our audience, and who I'm thinking of right now are our younger audience, maybe those that are currently in maybe high school. And you've mentioned several things that I want to touch on. Earlier, you mentioned on your love, or how you thrive off of change, needing to change. You mentioned being a lifelong learner, and also developing those around you. And I know that's a lot, but I have a story here I want to get to. It all is going to make sense. One thing about when we work with young people, and it could be students in high school, or maybe those that are in college or just newly graduated, sometimes they get very frustrated with the process. Sometimes they want to grow, move along the ladder much faster than sometimes they feel that maybe their colleagues think they should, or maybe they're just frustrated by the process. Sometimes also they forget that life, to have a perspective of wanting to be a lifelong learner, is going to benefit them. It's not just once you leave the classroom or leave the campus. It's really a skill set. It's a characteristic that would really benefit them in every aspect of their life, just not only personal, but professionally. And also there's this third point when working with young people. I know when we work with students, sometimes they get a little frustrated with adults around them that sometimes they feel are hard on them. They feel like, okay, ease up. It's not a big deal. Why are you focusing on things that aren't as important? But for those that are really trying to grow them, we do spend pay special attention to details and why things matter. So for you, in your own personal life, about liking to change and pivot and wanting to be that lifelong learner and also giving back, trying to grow those around you, how is it that we can better communicate those desires to the people that are around us, especially young people, that those three very distinct, but to me, they all kind of mesh, those three aspects that you talk about, that you clearly demonstrate, how is that we can better communicate the importance of those three areas that you use in your life?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Valerie, and I deal with that quite often with some of the newer folks we bring into the organization that I mentor, and that especially the ones that are very passionate and have a huge trajectory in front of them. They are very driven, very aggressive. They like challenge, they want to accomplish things, and they want to just keep on moving up. And I was one of those people. When I first started out, it was I was so hungry to learn and to accomplish things that I wanted to get in different positions or higher level positions, and I really had a vision set a long time ago based on some things I experienced that in my mind required me to be in a higher level of position so that I could influence the change that I wanted to see. So it was really important to me to get higher in the organization in a expeditious manner so that I could implement some of that change and influence what I wanted to see differently, and didn't really have any regard to what the experiences along the way, how important they were going to be, and how impactful they'd be to my effectiveness in whatever role it is I want to be in at the end of my career. So if I wanted to be a plant manager, while I might have the technical background that would make me successful in a technical aspect, that's not what a plant manager is, right? You're no longer a technical expert. It's about setting vision and culture and developing people. And in order to do that effectively, and in order to relate to people and to be authentic, you have to have experienced things to make you the most well-rounded, effective leader that you could possibly be. So while I probably could have more expeditiously gone up the ladder, it could have affected my career because I wouldn't be effective at the things that matter most the higher you get up in the organization. So it becomes so much more important to be able to relate to people, to understand how all of the cogs in the machine fit together in order to function. And if you have not experienced, a wide array of, failures or, opportunities or other departments or you name it, and you haven't worked with people of all different backgrounds, you could fail. And that could, affect your career when it shouldn't need to. You probably have the potential to be the CEO or the potential to be a senior VP, but you could negatively affect that and your ability to be successful and achieve that role, all because you moved up too quickly and didn't have all those experiences to make you the most effective. And I find sometimes we don't do a good job of explaining the why to the younger folks on why am I giving you this opportunity, and what do I think you're going to get out of it, and what do you want to get out of it. We just say, you're going to go do this. And I've been in that position where, you're going to go do this job, and I don't know what I'm getting out of it. And certainly afterwards, I'm pretty self-reflective, and I can see the things I got out of it, but it would have been much more effective for my development to have had someone explain the why. Here's what you're going to get out of it. And we leave that out a lot. And I think if we just took the time to communicate that with some of our, newer or younger folks, that it would be much more intentful on the development opportunity, and they'd see how it would all fit together to get them where they want to go and then to be successful in that role once they get there.
That's really wonderful. And I think we can all, no matter how sufficient or efficient we think we are at communicating, I think we can all get better in that respect. But I think it's really helpful, especially the way you phrase it, the way you put it, to communicate, especially to our younger folks and those that are going through the system or new to a position, that it's always about being better. Especially when you see, it's easy sometimes when you see so much in someone, sometimes you're sometimes harder on them because you see all the potential, you see how good they are, and the person receiving your comments or your feedback doesn't always understand it, so you try to communicate that. And I think especially with young people, students especially, that it's important, it's incumbent upon us to remember that we need to always stay in communication with them. So thank you for bringing that up, and I'm sure your team around you really appreciate that aspect about you.
Yeah, and I would say just along that line of sometimes we're harder on, people that we want to aggressively develop, and we don't tell them the why. I have been in a situation where I had a senior VP giving me what I felt like was very aggressive, pinpointed feedback that my peers weren't getting, and I really wanted to sit back and say, well, why am I being treated differently? When I had a mentor say, well, did you ask him? And I said, well, no. So I sat down and said, hey, I'm getting this feedback and I don't understand why I'm being treated differently or why you're being, so hard on me. And he said, because you're an investment. You're worth the time to give you all of this feedback and to be nitpicky, because I can see your potential and where you have the opportunity to go. And that's where I'm going to invest what little time I get every day. So if I only get so much time, I'm going to invest it, rather than giving some of this, feedback to folks where I don't see that, same trajectory. And so that gave me a perspective of why, we tend to be a little more aggressive on folks, and also the importance as a leader of explaining the why I'm doing this. And then as a person, asking the question, if something doesn't make sense, don't just make assumptions. You have to validate those assumptions. So that was an important development for me as well.
Nice.
So I wanted to ask, kind of going along those lines, what that VP said to you wasn't always the case after reading some of your biography and presentation that you had made that you sent over. I was wondering if you could go elaborate a little bit more into some of that background and how you were able to prove yourself in this industry.
Yeah, so there have been, experiences that I have had where I've been given feedback that, wasn't valuable. It was based on, someone's perception of how someone who looks like me or someone who should fit in this box, if I want you to be an ops director, this is the way an ops director behaves. And, that opinion is based off of people that look and think exactly like that individual. Because in this industry and, where I've worked, there really aren't any other women. So diversity is, while we're improving, and a lot better than where we were, even 5 years ago. 10 years ago when I came, into more of a management position, it was every role I had was I was the first female. So a lot of the feedback I got had to do with the frequency of my voice, or how high I was talking, or what I wore to work. And wearing leopard heels, doesn't make someone think, yeah, she is a manager at a nuclear power plant. And to me, that shouldn't have mattered. So really, your results should speak for themselves. So very early in my career, that was really my mission, was just to accomplish things, have favorable results, and meet the impossible and accept challenges. And now that I've gotten into the position where I am, providing that feedback on what people's perceptions are of folks that don't fit in the little box, that's really that was my mission when I was 16 years old, and had some experiences that made me decide that my whole vision for my life was not about what position I would be in, but more that I wanted to be in a position where I could influence change and make things different for the women that come after me. So I've had a lot of opportunities to kind of shape culture and provide feedback that we're a much better team and have a much better culture when you include everybody, include people that are different from you, include different perspectives, and ask for it. It's not just listening for it, but specifically asking to make folks, give them that comfort that they can, be authentic, bring their whole self to work. And so hopefully I answered your question and interpreted the way you wanted to go, but that is, that's been my focus over the last few years, and that's enjoyable, because that was my whole mission, was to try to shape and change, how we do business and who fits in the box.
That's awesome. And I wholeheartedly agree of the inclusion and everybody being kind of on the same playing field whenever you're considering them for different tasks and what their capabilities are. So I appreciate that message. One follow-up question is, what's the message that you tell females or those people that quote unquote don't fit in the box whenever you're encouraging them or mentoring them for different roles?
Yeah, I always encourage folks to be unapologetically you. We have come such a long way, in the industry and in society in general, that there's no reason to not be, unapologetically you. And when I was starting in my career and looking around and being the only female and not really having those allies, it was very hard for me to be myself. I really just wanted to adapt and fit in to try to get to a position where I felt I could better influence the change that I wanted to see. And I really missed an opportunity to start influencing change earlier in my career. I was raised to think that your ability to make decisions and to influence situations was position-based. And that's not true at all. A leader is a leader. It's not position-based. It's, are you driving change and influencing others to make that change? So there were a lot of opportunities that I missed to affect culture earlier in my career because I felt that I had not earned that yet, and that I was still trying to fit in to get into the right position. And it ended up affecting people that came after me. So my whole vision was, I'm going to get in a position to influence change and change things so that people behind me don't have to go through it. And I didn't do that. I put them in the exact same situation because I kept waiting to get into this higher position to influence that change. So, I always encourage people that you all should know what your leadership compass is. What do you stand for? And don't ever waver on that. Every decision you make, everything that you do should surround around that leadership compass. And it doesn't matter if you're just starting out, if you've been with a company for 20 years, you should know what that is and be willing to, provide feedback and help shape where you want things to go so that, we can achieve that. Because we're certainly not going to get where we want to be from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective if we aren't getting that input from the people that are experiencing it, right? We can't wait until we're at a higher level. It's got to be now. So that's what I usually tell people that I'm mentoring.
That is great, and that is powerful, and that is a really wonderful reminder to us all that, we shouldn't wait, and just to also, like I like to say, never underestimate the power of your influence. Everyone has an influence. Everyone has an effect. Everyone has those that are watching them. Some may have a bigger crowd, so to speak, or a bigger audience, but we all have influence. And so as soon, I think, as we accept that and own that and utilize that influence for the good or what our intention is in the world, the more satisfied we will be and the more we'll have an effect in driving the changes we want to make. So thank you for that. I love the way you phrased all of that. I do want to pivot just a bit because I'm trying to be mindful of time. Although, again, you're one of our guests that we'd love to have on forever, and we might have to have you back for sure. But you also talk, or you demonstrated in one of your presentations, one of the PowerPoints I was looking at, you talked about your personal life a bit, that you're a mother, you have a family, obviously, that you've come from, and you have responsibilities there. So can you talk a little bit about the balance, so to speak, if there is a balance? There's also that old phrase, you can have it all. Are you one of those people that think you can have it all, or you don't think you can? What is your philosophy on all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because my philosophy kind of changed as I went through new experiences, which is, again, is why it's important that everybody takes the time to have experiences so you can be as effective as you can be. But I think it all comes down to boundaries and priorities. So I am a mother of 3. I have a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 6-year-old. My husband stays at home, which is amazing. That he loves it and he's so good at it. So our strengths and weaknesses complement each other. But that's been huge for for me in my career. And I understand that that's not an opportunity for everybody. So what helped out earlier in my career before he stayed home is understanding what my priorities are between work and home. And they all have to blend in together. You can't say, well, my priorities at work are these 3, and then at home these are these 3, because with technology, we don't live in a culture any longer where you can separate the two, right? You're available 24/7 with your phone and email. So you have to make sure that your priorities kind of mesh. So priority has always been, I'm going to see my kids every day, and that I'm going to support them in their activities, and I want to be a part of their lives, and I want to be there for mommy, son, lunch day, and so that was priority 1. So all of my decisions in my life needed to support that, and that I couldn't be upset if priority 4 was being affected by a decision to support priority 1, because I prioritized these things in this manner. So it helped me very early in my career. I was getting very frustrated that I couldn't. Everything as, driven, passionate people we all are, everything had to be the number 1 priority, and I would get frustrated when I couldn't do all of it at once, because I really like to manage a bunch of things all at once. So I had to get more comfortable with, okay, what are the priorities and how do I make decisions that support them? So priority 1 was, seeing my kids every day, and priority 2 was I wanted support so that I could continue with my career progression. And, I had to decide whether, how to make that happen, but also meet priority 1. So there are some times where I've said no to opportunities because while it supported priority 2, it hurt priority 1. And that wasn't going to make me happy, and it wasn't going to benefit my family, which was most important. So I, in the past, would have been mad that I had to turn down priority 2 options because of other things, but it really helped me digest, my decision making so that I wasn't upset. I got exactly what I wanted out of it. So that's been huge, as well as getting more comfortable with saying, no, I can't do that, but here's what I can do. Not saying you've got to come off, curt or aggressive or anything, but there's, hey, this is what I've got, and if you need this, here's when I can do that. And so if I've got, coaching my kid's softball and she's got a game at 1500, understand you need this, I can give it to you at 2000 tonight, and is that okay? And sometimes it's not. Sometimes you work in nuclear power, it's a 24/7 industry, and the ops director things come up. So my family understands that occasionally there's going to be a plant transient and mommy's going to have to go into work, and I'm just very clear with communicating that, and they understand, and they don't hold it against me, because when I'm at home, that's their time. I don't look at my phone, I don't pull up my emails, and I make it very clear. I have to get something done for work. I'm going to leave for like a half hour upstairs. I'll be back. So there's not mommy's distracted type of thing. So that was also really important. So I think if I were to summarize it, it's those boundaries and being comfortable with saying, I can't do it now, but here's what I can do, and not feeling guilty about it, not feeling guilty about taking vacation time. That's your time, right? And boundaries and having that support and finding, those allies and that can help you and encourage you to take the actions that you need.
Carolyne, I was going to ask a question related to maybe sending you back 15, 16 years or 20 years, because you are talking to a group of students who are considering what to do with their lives. And I'm asking you to kind of remember being back in that stage, because there's a lot of different opportunities in front of them, whether it's a nuclear engineering education like you walked through, or other STEM education, or trade education, or even just going straight into trades. And they're trying to figure out what to do. And so as you now can look back on your university education, it'd be kind of interesting for me to hear you tell them what you got from it and what you did not get from it, and and that surprised you later when you got out in the real world and you actually realized, I know stuff, but I don't really know anything about this. And then I guess the third point would be these different things you're talking about the people being critical of the tone of your voice, or whatever aspect of the things you've had to overcome in your career. Was any of that happening at the university level too? Just to recognize that life is full of hills to climb and things to overcome. And so talk to these students in their freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year that are thinking about what to do, and kind of try to walk through that from your perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like queen of the underdogs. So in high school, I really didn't have any support for what I wanted to do. I was good at science, good at math. I wanted to be an astronaut. So I knew I needed to get an engineering degree. And I knew if it did, being an astronaut didn't work out, at least, an engineering degree, I could do so many things with that and not even be an engineer like I am right now. So I had a lot of folks, teachers, guidance counselors, even after I got accepted into Purdue for engineering, that told me I was going to fail and that I wasn't going to make it. Not because I didn't have the grades, but my personality, from what I was told, is, you're going to be set up for failure. And so let's encourage you to go somewhere else. And that was hard because I didn't have enough confidence at that time to know that, no, I can totally do this, and you don't really know me that well. Nobody knows you better than yourself. So don't ever let somebody else that isn't you convince you anything different than, what you know to be true about yourself, first of all. But I went to college, and so I came from a very small high school where I got great grades and didn't really have to try. So I thought college was going to be the same way, and I was sorely mistaken. So I started out at Purdue, and I failed my first chemistry class, and I tried so hard. I was doing all this extra work, getting with TAs, and it became very clear about the first week of school that this was supposed to be a refresher, and I didn't get any of this in high school. So it was going very quickly and far beyond what I was capable of digesting in that short amount of time. And so I was struggling in all of my classes, and I wanted to just quit. I said, you know what, these people were right. Oh, guidance counselor, teachers, they all knew better than me. So how disheartening that I don't even know myself. And so I came home and told my mom that I was done. I'm just going to go be a teacher, and I can't do this. Because I had a full ride scholarship, and it was going to be taken away. The scholarship committee said, clearly this is far beyond your capacity, so you need to find a more appropriate major, and then we'll continue the scholarship. So I was like, I'm done. I'm going to lose my scholarship, so I'm going to quit. And my mother refused. She was my only support system. She refused. She's like, you have never failed at anything. Even when I thought for sure there's no way you were going to accomplish something, you did it. So why would you think you're going to fail? You will figure out how to do it, and you have not been exposed to this. That's why you're failing. So you're going to keep trying. And you would also not be a good teacher, Caroline. So I went back. I lost my scholarship. I retook all those classes, and I got A's. And it became very clear that it wasn't that I wasn't smart enough. I just wasn't exposed to it. So I would say in that regard, first of all, you know yourself better than anybody else, and don't discount yourself. If you want to do it, you will figure out a way to do it, and it might take trying a different major, a different engineering discipline, or you might go to college 2 years and realize, I don't know that I want to be an astronaut anymore, which is exactly what I did, and I changed my major to nuclear engineering because it seemed pretty cool. So it's hard to be that young and walk into college and know what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And so change. If you're 2 years in and it's just not sitting well with you, there's no shame in changing. I did have to go an extra semester to, catch up on classes since I changed my major. But it was worth it in the end. I would have much rather do that and spend an extra semester than, come out and be miserable and end up having to either go back to school or be stuck in an industry that just doesn't sit well with me. So that's kind of, the high school and college perspective. And I will say, coming into my first job out of college, I was like, all right, let's, neutron diffusion equation. We're going to do some absorption calcs. This is going to be great. And that's not at all what I was doing. So I had really no experience with how the real world worked. And that also challenged my ability to visually put everything together in college. So if there's anything I could say about experiences in college, it would be to have co-ops, do internships, get real world experience of what a relay looks like. So when you're sitting in an electrical engineering class, it's not just a little thing on a piece of paper, right? You physically have seen it, in a facility. It will make much more sense. And I wish I would have done that. Instead, I did all of my internships in the steel mill because that's where my family worked. And so when I came out, I had no real life application of what I was going to be doing. And it made college a lot harder, for me at least. So a lot of times you will come out of college and you won't be doing the things that you were trained to do. But that will be essentially laying a foundation of base knowledge that you will need to build off of to be successful as you go out into the working world. So that's the way I would look at it, is that unless you're doing design, work or things that are very, specific to, that area, it's mostly going to be a foundation that you'll use as a platform for the rest of your career. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, that's all very good. And just as a point of solidarity, my freshman year, I failed communications. And yet I do that for a living now. And so it's not about that first fall, it's about how you get up. And that was a great way to respond to the question. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you so much for your time, Carolyne. I think your story is really inspiring, and I think a lot of our students will be able to, or those that listen, regardless if they're students or incoming professionals or young adults, that they can listen to these words and apply it to their professional and personal lives. So I really appreciate that. But are there any other questions that we have? I know probably Dr. Segovia has a final word.
I do. I can't help myself. But Carolyne, before you leave us today, I want to know maybe just a bit of wisdom, a little bit of mentorship that your parting words that you can leave with us. I'm thinking about students, professionals, young professionals, mid-level, older professionals, just in those challenges that we all come across. Because unfortunately, even as we get older, we are still sometimes faced with the prejudice. And what I mean by prejudice, people just prejudging us before they get to know our knowledge, our skill level, sometimes just by your appearance, again, as you were talking about earlier. How is it that, what words of wisdom can you provide us that would help those going through those levels of frustration where you feel undervalued, underappreciated, but to keep going forward, no matter your age, no matter your gender or the exact situation, but just feeling underappreciated, undervalued, misunderstood, and to keep going forward?
Yeah, I will say this was definitely a challenge for me, and sometimes I'm still challenged with it, and I have to kind of remind myself and ground myself in what I tell everyone else, is that you especially if you're in the nuclear industry or industries where there's high risk or a lot at stake, we don't accept anything but perfection. So we tend to have this subconscious mindset that I expect everything to be perfect, and I expect that I'm going to be treated perfectly, and I expect that I'm going to be perfectly acknowledged for the things that I'm doing well and recognized. And we aren't perfect, and we work with people, and people aren't perfect. We all make mistakes, and it's important to recognize that everyone, including our society and culture, and especially depending on where you work, that culture might be 25 years behind everybody else. This is a journey, right? You're part of the journey to, to someone else developing, to a culture developing, to a society developing. You're somewhere, regardless of where you are, in this journey of seeking constant improvement, because you're never going to achieve perfection. It's not possible. You're always going to be on a journey of improvement. So I think it's important to step back in those moments and think, okay, I could take this very personally, or I could provide this person some feedback, or I could ask, why did you say that? Or do you know? Ask questions. Do you know what I'm doing, or have I articulated what it is that I've accomplished, or whatever it may be? Seek to understand is what I would recommend. It's so easy to assume the worst. Especially if you're a diverse individual, it is very easy to fall back and think something's being done because of the way I look, my gender, whatever it may be. And more often than not, it's not. Or it could be a secondary bias that somebody doesn't even realize they have, because this is just the world we've grown up in. So we have to constantly try to check and adjust and be a part of that change. So I would acknowledge that some people have a certain perception, and in most of the time you can to provide feedback or try and encourage a change in that perception, but it's not going to benefit you by any means to assume ill will, or to come back at it with the same kind of negative energy, because that's just going to make two unhappy people. And at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can to control my happiness. So developing people and providing that feedback and helping shape culture and not get bogged down with the way things currently are, I can shape that. It may take a long time, but I can help shape that. So that kind of is, what motivates me. And I would say, being authentic. You always be authentic to who you are, and, be authentic with folks, be transparent. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. We are a much better society, much better college, much better company by having different, diverse perspectives. If we all think the same way, you're going to get to a certain level and you're not going to get it any higher, because you're going to keep getting the same results with the same input. So by having different perspective, that's what makes us grow. So be true to who you are, and I would never ever change who you are, to fit in and try to fit to a mold.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Just perfect.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Carolyne. I think, like I said before, it's just awesome to speak with you today, and I really appreciate your time with us.
I really appreciate having the opportunity. So thank you all very much. It was great.
All right. So that's going to close this out for today. So please, check out our other podcasts for the Path of Most Persistence and our other amazing speakers. Catch you next time. Thank you for listening to our podcast. The Nuclear Power Institute is a joint center with Texas A&M University and the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station, and is a component of the Nuclear Engineering and Science Center. For more information about our center or about our guest speaker today, please visit our website at npi.tamu.edu and look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you.